My in-laws laughed at my wedding dress, but they stopped laughing the moment my lawyer froze their $750 million family contract. That single moment still lives in my mind, not because of the money, but because of how everything changed in just a few minutes. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emily Carter. I grew up in a quiet town in Ohio, raised by parents who believed in kindness, honesty, and simple living. I never imagined myself marrying into wealth. When I met Landon Hawthorne, he didn't act like someone from a powerful family. He was charming, soft-spoken, and made me feel safe. I fell for the man he pretended to be, not knowing the pressure, expectations, and hidden agendas that surrounded his world. When he proposed, he insisted his family would love me. He said they didn't care about status or money, only happiness. I believed him. I wish I had looked deeper. I wish I had paid attention to the small moments when his mother, Victoria Hawthorne, sized me up, or when his sister tried to test me with passive-aggressive comments. But love makes you blind, and I kept telling myself it was just nerves, or maybe they didn't know me well enough yet. On my wedding day, I wore a simple ivory dress. It was the same dress my mother wore at her own wedding. She had passed away, and wearing it made me feel like she was still with me. I didn't care about designer labels or expensive lace. I cared about meaning. I walked into the Hawthorne estate that day feeling proud, emotional, and hopeful. But the moment I stepped inside, everything shifted. Victoria looked at me once, then burst into a quiet laugh, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Her friends covered their mouths, trying and failing to hide their smirks. One of the bridesmaids whispered, "That's the dress?" Seriously? Another recorded me with her phone as if my gown was a joke. I felt small, like I had stepped into the wrong life. The room was filled with chandeliers, polished marble, and designer gowns worth more than my yearly salary. And there I stood, holding on to a dress they believed wasn't good enough for their world. I looked at Landon for support, but he didn't defend me. He avoided meeting my eyes, as though he agreed with them. That hurt more than anything they said. In that moment, I realized I was completely alone in a room full of people who were supposed to be family. Still, I stayed quiet. I reminded myself this was my wedding day. I tried to smile. I tried to hold myself together, even though my heart felt like it was cracking open. I didn't know then that their cruelty was only the beginning, and that the truth behind this marriage would destroy everything I believed in. I didn't know that the simple dress they mocked would become the very thing that exposed their lies and changed the course of their precious $75 million deal. Emily stepped into the Hawthorne estate ballroom with her heart beating fast, not because she was nervous about getting married, but because the room felt too heavy, too polished, too full of eyes waiting to judge. The ballroom was huge, sparkling chandeliers, tall mirrors, and every corner decorated like it belonged in a magazine. Everyone wore designer clothes, diamonds, expensive shoes. And then there was Emily, holding on to her simple ivory gown that meant more to her than anything money could buy. The moment she took her first step inside, she heard it. Victoria Hawthorne's sharp whisper, loud enough to cut through the music. Did she get that off a clearance rack? Her voice carried, and it felt like the whole place paused for a second just to listen. A few guests laughed under their breath. Some didn't even bother to hide their smiles. Emily felt their eyes scan her dress from top to bottom, as if she had walked in wearing something inappropriate. Her bridesmaids, who were picked by Landon's family, exchanged looks. One raised an eyebrow, another rolled her eyes as if she couldn't believe Emily dared to show up in something so plain. They were all wearing matching satin dresses that cost more than Emily's entire wedding budget back in Ohio. They looked at her like she didn't belong next to them, like she was ruining the picture-perfect aesthetic they wanted. Then, as if things weren't bad enough, Landon's sister, Holly, lifted her phone and started live streaming. She angled the camera toward Emily, zooming in on her dress. Emily caught her whispering to her followers, "You guys, look at this. I swear she's trying to be vintage or something." Holly smirked at the screen, flipping her hair dramatically for the viewers who were already typing comments. Emily didn't have to see them to know they weren't kind. Each step Emily took felt heavier than the last. She kept her eyes forward, trying not to break down in the middle of the ballroom. She didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing her hurt. She tried to focus on her reason for being there, her love for Landon, but even that comfort felt thin. Every whisper, every laugh, every look made her question everything. Was she really welcome here? Or was she just a prop in their perfect society wedding? She reached the platform where she was supposed to wait for the ceremony to start. She held her bouquet tightly to keep her hands from shaking. She wanted to breathe, to clear her mind, but the noise around her didn't stop. Someone behind her joked softly, maybe she forgot the real dress at home. Another voice added, even Goodwill has better options. Emily kept standing, steadying herself, letting their words hit her but refusing to fall apart. She wasn't ashamed of her dress. She was ashamed of the people wearing suits and diamonds and still choosing cruelty over kindness. She looked around the room and realized something painful. This wasn't just small teasing. This was intentional humiliation. This was a message. They didn't think she was good enough for their family, their wealth, or their world. And even though she didn't know it yet, this moment would become the turning point. The same people who mocked her dress would soon watch everything they valued fall apart because of the woman they thought was weak. Emily searched the crowded ballroom for the one person who was supposed to make her feel safe. After all the whispers, the laughter, and the livestream mocking her dress, she needed Landon more than ever. She finally found him standing near the front, talking to a group of his cousins. For a moment, she felt relief. All she had to do was reach him, stand beside him, and everything would feel a little less painful. But the moment their eyes met, something inside her shifted. Landon looked away, quickly, almost nervously, as if he didn't want to be seen with her. He didn't smile. He didn't walk toward her. He didn't even acknowledge the obvious humiliation happening around them. Instead, he pretended he didn't notice anything. Emily took a slow breath, trying to convince herself she was overthinking, but his behavior was too deliberate. The man who once held her hand tightly in grocery stores now acted like the sight of her made him uncomfortable. She walked toward him anyway, hoping he would soften when she got closer. When she reached his side, his cousins glanced at her dress and exchanged the same mocking smiles she had seen all night. Emily waited for Landon to say something, anything, to defend her, to shut down the whispers, to let his family know he wouldn't tolerate their cruelty. Instead, Landon fixed his tie and kept his eyes focused on the floor. "Are you okay?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. She hoped it would pull his attention back to her. He didn't look at her. "I'm fine," he said quietly, sounding irritated rather than supportive. Emily felt her stomach twist. He wasn't fine, he was embarrassed. Embarrassed by her. By her simple dress. By how she didn't fit into the glamorous world his family lived in. She stood there silently, waiting for him to at least ask how she was doing, but he didn't. He didn't ask if she was hurt, if she felt humiliated, or if his family had crossed a line. He simply stood there, stiff, distant, and cold. More guests walked by, giving her that same judgmental look. One whispered near Landon, loud enough for Emily to hear, "You sure about this?" Landon didn't defend her. He didn't tell them to stop. He didn't say she was his future wife and deserved respect. He just stood there and let their words hang in the air. Emily felt something crack deep inside her, not just her pride, but her trust. She had imagined this day so differently. She thought her groom would be her shield, her comfort, the one person who would choose her no matter what others said. But now, as she stood beside him, she felt more alone than she had ever felt in her life. For the first time, a chilling thought crossed her mind, maybe Landon wasn't the person she believed he was. Maybe she had fallen in love with a version of him that didn't exist. And as he continued to avoid her eyes, offering no warmth or reassurance, Emily realized that the man she thought she knew was slipping away right in front of her, replaced by someone colder, quieter, and far more dangerous to her heart than any of his family's insults. The photographer called everyone together for the group photos, and Emily tried to steady her breathing. She told herself that if she could just get through this part, the ceremony would start soon, and maybe things would calm down. She stood where the photographer directed her, trying to ignore the whispers that still floated around the ballroom. She lifted her chin and forced a small smile, even though her heart felt heavy. Victoria approached the group slowly, pretending to adjust her jewelry and talk to guests along the way. Emily didn't think much of it until she felt a sharp tug at the bottom of her dress. Before she could react, she heard the unmistakable sound of fabric tearing. A quiet rip, small, but enough to be noticeable, echoed in her ears like a warning. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She looked down and saw Victoria's heel pressed into her gown, right on the hem. The older woman widened her eyes dramatically. "Oh dear," she said, putting a hand over her chest, "I didn't see it there." Her voice was sweet, almost innocent, but her eyes told a different story, cold, amused, unapologetic. Emily stepped back carefully, trying not to make the tear worse. She gently lifted the damaged hem, feeling her hands tremble. Before she could even compose herself, one of the bridesmaids let out a short laugh. Another leaned in and whispered to the woman beside her, "Guess cheap fabric shows." They giggled, covering their mouths like they were in on some private joke. Emily's cheeks burned, and she felt her heartbeat rise. She had expected coldness, maybe some passive-aggressive comments, but she never imagined they would rip her dress and treat it like entertainment. She glanced at Landon, hoping he had seen what happened, hoping he would finally step forward and defend her. But he stood with his cousins, checking his watch, not paying attention, not noticing the humiliation happening just a few feet away. The photographer tried to keep things moving. "Let's regroup," he said politely, clearly sensing the tension. Emily forced herself back into place, holding the torn hem behind her so it wouldn't show in the photos. Her hands shook so much she had to press her fingers together to keep them steady. Victoria stood beside her, too close, smiling as if nothing had happened. Her perfume was strong, her posture perfect, her expression glowing with pride, not for her son's wedding, but for the power she held in that room. She had made her point, Emily didn't belong here. And she wanted everyone to see it. Emily swallowed hard. She felt the sting behind her eyes, the familiar burn of tears threatening to fall. She blinked quickly, refusing to let them spill. Not here. Not in front of these people. She had promised herself she wouldn't let them break her today. She reminded herself why she was here. Her mother's memory. Her vows. Her belief in love, even if it felt shaky right now. She stood still, shoulders straight, forcing herself to breathe through the humiliation. The camera flashed, capturing smiles that didn't match the truth of what was happening. Emily held her ground, even with a torn dress and laughter behind her. She told herself silently, "They can mock me, but they can't take my strength." What she didn't know yet was that the same family laughing at her now would soon face consequences far bigger than a ripped hem, consequences no one in that ballroom could predict. Emily slipped away from the ballroom as soon as she could. The noise, the lights, the whispers, the fake smiles, everything felt too heavy. She needed air, a moment to herself, a place where no one was staring at her torn dress or laughing behind her back. She walked down a long hallway, past the rows of closed doors, searching for a quiet corner where she could breathe without feeling watched. She finally found a dimly lit sitting room at the end of the corridor. She reached for the doorknob, ready to step inside, when she suddenly heard voices coming from the other side. She froze. It was Victoria's voice, sharp, confident, impossible to mistake. Emily hesitated, not wanting to eavesdrop, but something in Victoria's tone made her pause. Then she heard Landon's voice. Emily's heart dropped. She leaned closer, keeping herself hidden by the doorframe. She didn't plan to listen, but once the words reached her ears, she couldn't move away. Victoria spoke first. "She's doing her part. The board won't question the image now. A simple girl from Ohio, perfect for your family man narrative." Emily frowned, confused. family man narrative? Landon sighed softly. As long as the merger goes through, I don't care what she wears. This marriage is nothing compared to a $750 million deal. Emily felt her chest tighten. She waited for him to correct himself, to say she meant something more than a business move. But he didn't. Victoria chuckled. Exactly. She's harmless, easy to manage, emotional enough to play the supportive wife. The public loves that. And once the contract is secure, you can create whatever distance you want. Emily covered her mouth, feeling her breath catch. She stepped back slowly, her mind spinning. She kept hoping she was misunderstanding what she heard, but the conversation continued, leaving no room for doubt. Landon added, I told you she'd agree to everything. She trusts too easily. She thinks I actually care about all this romance stuff. Victoria replied, she served her purpose. After tonight, the rest is business. The words hit Emily like a physical blow. She staggered, gripping the wall to keep herself steady. She waited, hoping nothing worse could follow, but then Victoria's final line cut straight through her. You chose the right girl for the image. Quiet, simple, easy to control. Perfect for the merger. Emily felt her world collapse. She wasn't the bride he loved, she was a tool. A requirement. A box checked on a corporate list. She backed away from the door, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Every memory of their relationship flashed in her mind, the late-night talks, the promises, the proposal she thought was genuine. None of it was real. Every moment was a setup. Every word was rehearsed. Every smile was a performance. Her simple dress, the thing they mocked all night, suddenly felt heavier. She had worn it for love. They saw it as proof that she was easy to manipulate. Emily walked back down the hallway with quiet steps, trying to hold herself together. The humiliation from earlier felt small compared to this. This wasn't just cruelty. This was betrayal. This was a plan. This was her heart being used as collateral for a contract worth more than her entire life savings. She didn't cry yet, not because it didn't hurt, but because the shock was too deep. She just kept walking, carrying the truth she was never meant to hear, a truth that would change everything she thought she knew about her marriage, her groom, and her place in that house. Emily didn't wait for the night to end. She couldn't stand in that ballroom smiling beside a man who had just admitted he never loved her. She walked back through the long hallway, her steps shaky but determined. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. She searched for Landon, and when she finally spotted him near the bar, laughing with his cousins, something inside her snapped. She walked straight toward him, her torn dress brushing the floor, her hands trembling. Landon noticed her approaching and his smile faded. He looked nervous, almost irritated, like she was interrupting something important. Emily stopped right in front of him, struggling to keep her voice steady. We need to talk, she whispered. Landon sighed, glancing at his cousins as if she was being dramatic. But he followed her to the edge of the room where the music was softer. Emily took a deep breath, trying to gather the courage to say the words that were burning in her chest. I heard you, she said quietly. I heard everything you and your mother said. Landon's expression tightened, but he didn't look surprised. That hurt more than anything. He didn't even pretend to be confused or innocent. He didn't ask what she heard. He already knew. Emily continued, her voice shaking, you used me for a merger. For image. For money. Did you ever mean anything you said to me? Landon didn't even hesitate. Emily, he said, sounding stressed, this marriage benefits the company. Don't ruin this for us. Us? She stared at him, feeling those two letters cut through her like a blade. There was no us. There never had been. Only him, his family, and the money they worshipped. She had been nothing more than a strategy, an accessory they could shape into whatever made them look good to investors. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. So that's all I am to you? A prop for your business deal? Landon rubbed his forehead impatiently. You're overreacting. You'll adjust. Everyone in this family makes sacrifices. This is just part of the role. Part of the role. He said it like she was an actress playing a part he assigned her. He said it like her feelings didn't matter at all. Emily felt something inside her break, not her spirit, but the last bit of attachment she had to this man. The person she had loved simply didn't exist. He had never existed. She had married a lie wearing a suit and a charming smile. She looked at him differently now, not with love, but with clarity. This marriage is already over, she whispered, more to herself than to him. You might not know it yet, but it is. Landon folded his arms, irritated. You're not going anywhere. We need this to work. Just get through tonight without making a scene. Emily almost laughed at the coldness in his voice. He wasn't worried about her heart or her pain. He was worried about appearances. She straightened her shoulders, wiping the last warmth from her expression. I won't ruin your big night, she said softly. Not tonight. Landon relaxed, thinking he had won. But Emily's mind was already shifting. She wasn't leaving, not yet. Not until she was done. Not until she made sure the people who mocked her, lied to her, and used her felt the kind of blow they never saw coming. She walked away from him with calm steps, her heart shattered but her resolve turning sharp. If they thought she was weak, they were about to learn how wrong they were. Emily walked back into the ballroom, trying to appear calm even though her entire world felt like it had shattered. The humiliation, the betrayal, the cold truth of Landon's intentions, it all sat heavy on her chest. But she wasn't alone tonight. There was one person in that room who had known her since they were 12, someone who never judged her, someone who had always fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself. Rachel Monroe. Top corporate attorney in Chicago. Fierce, brilliant, unapologetically loyal, and Emily's childhood best friend. Rachel had flown in for the wedding even though she had a major case coming up. She didn't care about the Hawthorne wealth or their reputation. She came because Emily asked her to. Emily spotted her near the back of the ballroom, sipping a drink, clearly uncomfortable with the snobbish atmosphere but trying to blend in for Emily's sake. Emily walked straight to her, feeling her throat tighten. Rachel saw her expression and immediately set her glass down. What happened? She asked softly. Emily didn't answer right away. She just pulled Rachel into a side hallway where no one could hear them. The moment they were alone, the truth poured out. She told her everything, the laughing guests, the ripped dress, Landon's cold silence, and the conversation she overheard behind the door. Rachel's expression darkened with every word. By the time Emily finished, Rachel looked like she was holding herself back from storming into the ballroom and flipping tables. Please tell me you didn't sign anything yet, Rachel said urgently. Emily hesitated. Earlier tonight, Landon's mother pushed some papers in front of me. She said it was routine, for the family trust. Rachel held out her hand. Show me. Emily reached into her small clutch and pulled out the folded documents she had forgotten she was carrying. Rachel opened the papers, her eyes scanning each line with trained precision. Emily stood there silently, watching Rachel's face shift from confusion, to irritation, to something sharper. Then Rachel let out a short, cold laugh. Oh, Emily, they forgot a clause. Emily blinked. What does that mean? Rachel took a step closer, lowering her voice even though no one was nearby. It means whoever drafted this was so confident you wouldn't read it that they got sloppy. She tapped a paragraph with her finger. This clause ties the entire $750 million merger directly to your marriage, but they forgot to protect themselves if you walk away. Emily's heart skipped. But Landon said I couldn't leave without ruining everything for them. Rachel smirked. He's right, but not in the way he thinks. If you divorce him before the merger is finalized, the deal collapses. Completely. And the Hawthorns will lose every penny attached to it. Emily felt the words hit her slowly, like light breaking through fog. So, they need me more than I need them? Rachel nodded. Exactly. Emily swallowed hard, the weight of her betrayal shifting into something steadier: strength, control. For the first time that night, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel powerless. The dress they mocked, the tears she held back, the humiliation they enjoyed, suddenly it all felt distant compared to the leverage she now held. Rachel folded the papers neatly. If they think they can use you and throw you aside, they're about to learn the cost of underestimating you. Emily breathed in, slow and steady. What do I do? Rachel's smile turned razor-sharp. Exactly what you're already doing. Stay calm. Stay quiet. And when the moment comes, let me handle the rest. For the first time that night, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she finally had something the Hawthorns couldn't take from her. Power. Emily sits at the edge of the long brunch table, quiet and unnoticed, while the Hawthorns celebrate loudly, convinced they have already won. Victoria waves her champagne glass in the air, bragging about the merger as if it is already done. Landon nods proudly beside her, acting like nothing happened last night and like Emily is just an accessory in the room. No one looks at her, no one asks how she is, and no one even tries to hide their arrogance. They think Emily is powerless. They think the deal is secure. They think she will stay silent forever. But they have no idea what happened after the wedding chaos. They don't know Rachel worked through the night, studying every page of the contract with sharp focus, finding the exact point where the Hawthorns slipped. And they don't know she filed the injunction before dawn. Emily sits there, calm and steady, waiting for the moment everything changes. It happens fast. A Hawthorne executive rushes into the room, whispering urgently into Victoria's ear. Victoria's smile freezes. She slowly sets her champagne down, her face draining of color. Landon leans in, confused, and grabs the paper the executive is holding. His eyebrows pinch, his mouth parts slightly, and then he stiffens. The room falls silent when Victoria slams the documents on the table. The merger is not approved. In fact, it is officially frozen. All $750 million is on hold until further notice. The notice states that the deal is under investigation due to ethical conflicts involving fraudulent marital representation. Those words echo across the room like a bomb. Guests stare. Executives murmur. Someone gasps. Landon shoots up from his seat, demanding explanations. Victoria shakes her head, furious and terrified, asking how this could happen. Every excuse they try to make collapses. They know what this means: investors will panic, partners will question everything, and the entire Hawthorne empire may slip from their hands. Emily watches them scramble, their confidence cracking apart piece by piece. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't announce anything. She simply sits with quiet strength, knowing this collapse began the moment they decided she was weak enough to manipulate. The Hawthorns realized too late that the woman they humiliated, mocked, and used is the same woman who just turned their world upside down. And as the room fills with chaos, Emily remains steady, finally understanding that she never needed their approval, only the truth. Emily rose from her seat, her posture straight, her shoulders back. The simple ivory dress she had worn the night before, mocked, laughed at, and torn, now felt different. It felt like armor. Every stitch, every crease, every little imperfection that her in-laws had used to humiliate her suddenly became proof of her strength. She looked around the room, calm, her eyes steady, and saw the panic on the faces of the people who had spent the last 24 hours trying to control and humiliate her. Victoria Hawthorne's mouth opened and closed, words failing her as she realized the power shift. Landon's face was pale, his usual arrogance stripped away, replaced by shock. Guests whispered among themselves, their curiosity mixed with fear, sensing the collapse of the empire they had assumed untouchable. Emily's heart didn't race. She didn't feel triumphant, but she felt in control in a way she never had before. She took a slow step forward. Her voice was calm, clear, carrying across the room without needing to shout. "You didn't break me," she said, looking each of them in the eyes. "You exposed yourselves. All the lies, all the manipulation, it's out now. And it's on you. The room grew quiet. The chatter stopped. Some of the executives who had once fawned over the Hawthorns looked uncomfortable. The family realized their reputation, their influence, and their deal, all of it, was hanging by a thread. Emily had not only survived their attacks but had turned the situation completely around without raising her voice or creating a scene. She walked past them, each step deliberate, her dress flowing softly with her movement. Rachel followed closely, her expression calm but vigilant, ready to support her friend if needed. The mansion that had felt suffocating the night before now seemed smaller, less intimidating, as Emily moved through it with confidence. Every sneer, every mocking glance, and every whisper of doubt behind her back belonged to a past that no longer controlled her. As she reached the main doors, she paused briefly and looked back once more. The people who had tried to diminish her were frozen in shock, their pride crumbling in real time. The billion-dollar family who had believed they could bend her to their will now scrambled in panic, unsure of their next step, powerless to undo what had just happened. Emily stepped outside into the crisp morning air, feeling a strange calm settle over her. She hadn't needed revenge in the moment, and she hadn't needed to argue or yell. Her dignity was intact, her integrity untouched, and for the first time, she felt truly free. Rachel walked beside her, offering a reassuring smile, and Emily returned it, grateful for the support and the quiet strength that had carried her this far. They walked away together, leaving the mansion, the humiliation, and the chaos behind. Emily's mind was clear. She knew the Hawthorns would never forget this day, and neither would she. The simple dress that had once been mocked was now her symbol, a reminder that she could stand tall, face betrayal, and emerge stronger, untouched by the cruelty of those who underestimated her. The morning after Emily walked out, the Hawthorns were in complete disarray. The news of the injunction and the frozen $750 million merger spread quickly. Investors called, partners questioned every detail, and the media caught wind of the story. The empire that had seemed untouchable the day before was crumbling. Landon's reputation, once spotless, was now tainted with whispers of manipulation and fraud. Every move he had made to use Emily for a business deal now reflected back on him, leaving him vulnerable and exposed. Victoria Hawthorne scrambled to control the damage, arranging emergency meetings, sending messages to lawyers, and trying desperately to reassure investors. But it was too late. The documents Rachel had found were airtight. Every loophole the Hawthorns had relied on was now turned against them. Their pride, their control, and their image were unraveling. Emily's calm and measured approach had done what anger or confrontation never could. It left them powerless, unable to fight back without exposing themselves further. Meanwhile, Emily had begun the legal steps to annul the marriage. It wasn't about revenge for her anymore, it was about clearing her name, taking back control of her life, and ensuring the people who had used her couldn't manipulate her any longer. Every document she signed, every legal step she took, reinforced the fact that this marriage had never been about love. It had been a calculated strategy by a family that underestimated her. Once the annulment process was in motion and the merger permanently collapsed, Emily shared her story online. She didn't seek sympathy or attention. She wanted people to see what could happen when someone tries to use kindness, trust, and love as leverage. Her message was simple: never let anyone define your worth. Money can buy a mansion, but not character. Her story spread quickly, resonating with thousands who had felt powerless in their own lives, showing that strength often comes in quiet, deliberate actions rather than loud confrontations. The girl they mocked for wearing a simple dress, the woman they tried to humiliate and control, had walked away with something that money could never buy. She had peace, a calm clarity that came from knowing she had not compromised her dignity. She had self-respect, a reminder that no amount of ridicule or manipulation could force her to diminish herself. And she had justice, quiet, measured, and complete, ensuring that the family who had laughed at her would now have to face the consequences of their own actions. Emily returned to Ohio shortly after, leaving the Hawthorne mansion and all its drama behind. She didn't look back. She focused on rebuilding her life, on her career, on the people who truly valued her. Her simple dress, once a source of mockery, became a symbol of resilience and strength. And in the end, she realized that the power she had gained from facing betrayal head-on was far greater than any inheritance, contract, or family name. She had reclaimed her life, her voice, and her freedom, and nothing could ever take that away.